repeal and replace Obamacare failed. Nancy Cordes shows us what's next.
There's never been tax cuts like what we're talking about.
President Trump traveled to Indiana to tout what he called a once-in-a-generation opportunity.
I guess it's probably something I could say that I'm very good at. I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Republicans released an 8-page framework. Goal number 1, slashing the corporate tax rate from 35% to 20%. For individuals, the plan would take the 7 current income tax brackets with rates that range from 10% to 39.6% and consolidate them to 3 brackets, 12%, 25%, and 35%. Democrat Chuck Schumer cried foul.
The top rate on the wealthiest comes down, and the bottom rate on working class families goes up. What kind of plan is this?
But Republicans argue that doubling the standard deduction and boosting the child tax credit will lower working class taxes. Their plan preserves breaks for mortgage interest and charitable giving, but eliminates most other itemized deductions, along with the estate tax and the alternative minimum tax.
Simplifying the tax code so that you can file your taxes on a form the size of a postcard.
Republicans made a show of unity today, even as analysts warned the plan could reduce government revenue by $2 trillion or more over the next 10 years.
Yeah, so the question is, how do you pay for it?
South Carolina Republican Tim Scott insists the bill, once written, will close costly loopholes.
Isn't that the hard part, getting rid of all the goodies that people have gotten used to?
It is the process. So the process is typically painful, but the outcome of seeing folks keep more of their take-home pay, seeing our nation become more competitive in a global scale, these are great outcomes. I hope we get there.
He and other Republicans are hoping to get that bill done by Thanksgiving, and they will probably try to keep the lobbyists and special interests at bay by waiting as long as possible, Elaine, to reveal which loopholes and carve-outs are on the chopping block.
Well, Nancy, you mentioned this plan is more of an outline right now. What specific steps need to take place for it to become comprehensive legislation?
Well, first and foremost, they need to write up that legislation. You know, there are so many questions left by this outline. For example, they say that there are going to be 3 tax brackets that are going to be 12%, 25%, 35%. But who fits into those tax brackets? That's a very crucial question that most Americans would like to know. Which one of those brackets is going to be theirs? You know that the corporate tax rate they want to reduce from 35% to 20%, and they say that in exchange for doing that, they're going to sweep out all of these deductions, but we don't know which corporate deductions they're talking about. And there's going to be, of course, incredible pressure on Republicans not to eliminate any of these deductions. And so will they be successful? So that's part of the reason that they're sort of not cluing lobbyists and K Street in to exactly what's going to go, because that would sort of unleash a furious lobbying effort. All these special interests descending on Capitol Hill trying to protect their one particular carve-out. And then you've got Democrats. Some of them may go along with this at the end of the day, but a lot of them are going to argue that this is simply too sweet for the wealthiest Americans, who could see their tax rate drop from 39.6% to 35%. They also eliminate the estate tax. And Democrats are going to be watching to see what other carve-outs remain in place for the wealthy, who have seen their incomes rise over the past decade, as most other Americans have seen their incomes stay mostly stagnant.
Well, Nancy, in the past, the president had pushed a 15% corporate tax rate. Now he's calling 20% his red line. How else is this plan different from what he had originally said he wanted?
Well, he initially said that he didn't want to see the wealthy pay less. And in fact, he thought perhaps they should pay more. That's something that his former top advisor, Steve Bannon, had pushed for when he was in the White House. So that's why there's still a question mark regarding this top tax bracket of 35%. In fact, in his speech in Indiana, the president said there might be some kind of surcharge over and above that 35% for the very wealthiest Americans, because he and some others in the White House are going to continue to fight for the wealthy, if not paying more, at least not paying any less than they pay right now. That is a philosophical issue, and one in which the president actually lines up closer to Democrats than to Republicans, who argue that taxes should come down for everyone. But it's also a revenue issue, because if the very wealthiest of Americans pay less, that adds to the huge amount of revenue that Republicans could potentially leave on the table. It's very difficult right now to calculate exactly how much revenue would be lost as a result of this bill. That's because there's still so many details that we're missing. But the back of the envelope calculations range from $2 trillion up to $4 or $5 trillion. And, Republicans say they can make some of that up by boosting the economy with all of these tax cuts. They say that'll bring more money, but it's not going to bring $5 trillion into the tax system. And so that's a big, big question mark right now.
Oh, Democrats, what are the chances realistically, Nancy, that this could get some bipartisan support?
Well, there are some Democrats who say that they are open to tax reform, even if the wealthiest Americans don't end up getting a tax cut. Either way, that they're going to be for it. There are also some Democrats who did not sign on to a letter that was circulated by Democratic leadership saying that they wouldn't back any tax reform package that added to the federal deficit. Folks like Joe Donnelly of Indiana, who traveled with the president to Indiana and got a warning from the president in exchange that if he didn't back the legislation, the president might come back to Indiana and campaign against him. Thanks a lot, Mr. President, for the ride. But the politics on this issue don't cut exactly the same way that they do on health care, for example. There was pretty clear you were never going to get any Democratic support. In this situation, you can see a scenario where a small number of Democrats would sign on. But, it really depends on what the details look like at the end of the day. You're also, I should add, Elaine, seeing a little more outreach from the White House and the president in particular to some Democrats, asking their opinion, sharing details of the plan that you didn't see when it came to health care.
All right. Nancy Cordes on Capitol Hill for us. Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.